Welcome back, everybody. As you can see, I'm getting ready to play a scenario for Race for Bastogne, the most recent release from MMP on the Grand Tactical series. And my goal with this video, or videos, set of videos probably, is twofold. One, to introduce people, if you're not familiar with the Grand Tactical series, a little bit of how it plays out, what the feel is like for the game system, give you an idea of the sequence of play and some of the decision making you have to do as each game progresses. It's not going to be a tutorial in how to play. I think there's some pretty good tutorials on how to play, but if you're not familiar with the system, it'll give you an idea. You can kind of look behind my back as I go through these turns and kind of get a feel for how it plays out. And then the second purpose really is to give people who have played Grand Tactical System and haven't gotten this particular game yet, give you an idea of what it has to offer, some of my feelings about it, and how I would compare it to some of the other games in the system, especially when you're talking about like The Greatest Day and Devil's Cauldron. Those are two that I've played at least a small amount, enough to get an idea of how they might compare. Obviously, if we got into the really nitty gritty, we talk about the rule changes from Devil's Cauldron into Greatest Day and the rule set. And one of the things people might complain about is in Devil's Cauldron, especially when you're talking about assault resolution, there's a fairly, I don't know if I'd call it a big difference, but it's a big enough difference between Devil's Cauldron rules and then the 2.0 with Greatest Day and now this Race for Bastogne, that you can't play 2.0 rules with Devil's Cauldron. So there is that. I mean, you can go back and forth. Once you get really acclimated to the rule set, you can go back and forth, but it is kind of disconcerting to have to play it a little bit differently when you go back to that particular game. Just an idea of the setup for this scenario. Again, I realize some people watching don't know anything about the Grand Tactical System, but just to give you an idea of how this is set up, this is scenario 4 called Speed Bumps, and it's definitely a delaying action because the Allied side, the US, does not have a lot of forces to bring to bear, as you can see on the board. And then the German side starts the first turn with this stack, this formation that's ready to come on board, that battalion specifically, and then they will have all of these reinforcements coming on as well. The goal of this scenario, as far as victory conditions go, let me get this straightened out here. Okay. if you look at the map situation, this is actually two parts of the map put together. You can see the seam right here, the two maps. And if I extended it, this is one of those games that's more long than it is wide. It's not nearly like I was going to say Where Eagles Dare, another in the GTS series, and that one is a much larger game than this. This is kind of one of those in between, but it's this way that you're going to need some length. I have actually folded part of each of the east and west maps. As you can see, Bastogne is here. Let's move this. The weather map. Bastogne is over there, but it does not play any part in this scenario. So you will need some, if you're playing the full scenario, the campaign scenario, you're going to need length this way. But this, one of these white tables, folding tables, I've got a couple of these. This would do it, pretty sure. There are some optional small maps that you can use for some of the beginning scenarios, and you can also optionally connect the small maps to the two east-west maps. So there's that. This particular scenario is even smaller in the sense that I've marked off the borders where the actual scenario takes place. The goal for the German player, which the American player needs to simply stop doing, there's two possible victory conditions. The first of which is fairly straightforward. If you see where the units will start over here, all the reinforcements for German come in on that road, and if they get 12 units of any type, 12 units off the western edge before the finish of the scenario, they will win. So that's the straightforward way. See if I can loosen this up a little bit. And the biggest thing to think about there is they're going to have to use column movement. Counters look like this, and column movement is much faster in terms of train costs, but it also causes problems as far as defending. It's a lot easier to get damage when you're in column. So you have to balance out how much you use column and how much you can afford to not be in column and still make it off the western edge. Since there are some areas where you can move in clear terrain up in the northern part of the map, that's a possibility, going across this way and then latching onto this road here and off, but it is still slower, obviously, than using the roads. There's some secondary roads here, but they only go back to the main primary road, so it's a matter of possibly using them to bypass some of the American units on the main route, but it's not going to help a ton. Once you get to, I really have to get looser here. Sorry about that. Once you get to Longville, there are two ways off if you're looking at routes to get off the board in a quicker manner. So that's the first possibility, 12 units off by the end of the day, and really this is just one day's time. Turns are 2-hour increments, and it starts on the 700 turn, and the last night turn of the day, or the last turn of the scenario is the night turn on that December 18th. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 turns to get 12 off. The other way you can achieve victory is it's a little more interesting, and I'm not sure how easy this would be in comparison to just getting them off the western edge. And remember, just moving them off the edge, they don't have to be in supply, they don't have to be in command. If you manage to move it off the western edge, they count. But the other way to achieve victory in this scenario is to have a clear primary road off from the east edge to the west edge, and obviously that's the only one we can use on the east edge. And then it travels down this way. Once you get to Longville area, you can go either northwest or straight west. So you could use either of those two options on the far west, but you have to have one primary road open, free of enemy units, free of American units, but also free of any firing range of American units. So this one has a range of 2, so if it was here, it would affect the primary route. There are some armored units for the Americans that have a range of 4, so you have to consider that when thinking about the possibility of clearing that primary route. And you always have to be careful about the way that activations happen in the game, because there is a random element in terms of activation. And if, for instance, you've cleared a route and it looks good, but there are still some American units around, that means there's a possibility that they might be the last to be activated. And if they're last activated, all they would have to do is get a unit within firing range of that primary route. And this from here to the east edge is going to be the main point of contention if you go that victory route, because if this is all clear and there aren't any units anywhere in this area, then the Germans could go either straight west or up northwest, and it would be a little bit easier to manage to get one of those for the German side, and the Americans have to cover both. So I think I'm going to initially go for getting 12 units off and try to do a speed run. My idea is that the initial armored formation battalion will come in and try to clear out any of that immediate defense by the US and clear a pathway, and then all the other units that are coming in as reinforcements can then slip through. But I don't know how, if this northern route is going to be worth going. I'll have to take a look at how many movement points it's going to take to get through there. And then there's going to be a bottleneck because I'll have to probably use that road here, and that because there's an issue with either elevated or depressed railroad or road hexes. You can only get on at certain points, and you can't get off as far as armored units or wheeled tracked units go. So have to be careful about that too, because it may create a problem trying to use that area of the map. So that's kind of the setup, and there's a little bit of leeway in terms of where the US can go, but it's pretty much anchored to certain hexes. So some of these units can be within a 1 or 2 or 3 hexes of a given hex that's on the scenario setup. So one of the things to remember is that only engineers can do roadblocks. Roadblocks look like this. Basically, roadblock can be set up anywhere. It's obviously best used at road junctures, such as the one that armored unit is, or the armored infantry is at. No, sorry, engineer. This is armored infantry. And so we'll probably build a roadblock right there at that point to slow down the Germans. They can go around a roadblock. They can also get rid of it if they take the time to. So it's just a delaying tactic, and if I can build one there and then move that engineer, you can see that the US most of the time will have half tracks to go along with their infantry. So he could build the roadblock and then move down the road and build another one somewhere else. But I only have that one engineer, so he's going to be busy. There's a forward armored company along with this. I think that's a tank destroyer company attached, core assets, and some various units in here, which I'll try to see what I can do as far as flexibility. This unit right here is basically self-propelled artillery. I think the range is 24. So that can do some damage from long range, especially in terms of putting down barrages and making it slower even if you don't get any hits, you can cause problems as far as moving in and out of those hexes. I think that's it for setup, and I'm going to next show you a little bit how to get started on a game like this. We'll see if we can't get you through some of the basic steps and concepts without really teaching it, just so you get an idea if you've never played GTS before. Now, generally there's 2 big concepts besides the idea behind movement in combat. That's something you have to kind of wrap your head around. But as far as what drives the game and how turns are going to progress, there's a couple things that are important. right away. That is, first of all, command. The biggest thing with command in this game is each division, which is going to be made up of one or more battalions in any particular scenario. They have command points and they have dispatch points. I'm not going to explain how they get those. Maybe as we're going along we'll show you that. But basically command points is what drives some of the actions. You can do second actions by spending a command point. Each unit, as they're performing a part of their turn and an action, they always get that first action if they've drawn a formation chit or a division chit, but they would have to pay one command point for each unit that's doing a second action, second activation, I guess you would say. And they also, command points can be used to guarantee certain successes for specific activities. Sometimes it will have to do with changing. Let me show you a counter here. Changing a suppression to a cohesion hit. Things like that, where you can guarantee success instead of having to roll. And that's where the command points come in. You'll see that as we're playing. Dispatch points are more concerned with getting... You can actually buy dispatch points by spending command points. But dispatch points are used for artillery parks, forming an artillery park, but they're mainly used for adding, I'll show you, for adding formations to the cup. So you can guarantee that formation will come up in the following turn. That's one of the cool things about this game, is that formations aren't guaranteed of moving every turn. You have to pay. You have to plan ahead. There's, I think that's one of the reasons you can call this grand tactical system, because there's an amount of planning in here that you wouldn't normally do in a tactical game like this. So those dispatch points are important for that, and we'll show you how to use those as we go along. And that leads us to the other really important thing that drives every turn, and that's these chits that will go in to the cup each time, or at the beginning of each turn. Generally, you're going to be able to get a direct command. Again, we'll show you how that works when we get to it. That's the German. It's actually in German. There's the US side. So those will generally go in every turn. Generally, the division activation will go in. They look like this. The beginning of this scenario, this is just counted as the first activation. You pretend that you've drawn that right away at the beginning of the scenario. This US one will go in. That's division activation for their side. Typically, a random event will go in. And in this case, you don't have to pay for this one. The KG von Bohm is put in on the first turn before you begin the game, so that one you don't have to pay for. Typically, like in the following turn, I will have to pay to use this, or put it in the cup. And that costs dispatch points. We'll show that as we go. In this scenario, you can use what they call rear guard units, and there's a limit in particular scenarios, and in the game overall there's only so many you can use depending on the counters that are in the counter mix. And in this game the US can use a tank rear guard, a tank destroyer rear guard, the armored infantry, and the regular infantry rear guard. So those are the only ones they can form. They have all these roadblocks available for this division. Each division has their own set of roadblocks that they usually can use. There are no roadblocks for the obvious reasons for the German player in this one. The German has these divisional trucks available because there's a couple units that do not have their own inherent, I'll just show you here, inherent transport. So this, oops, that's not what I wanted to show. This infantry unit, if you flip it, it's got trucks already with it. And there's an occasional unit that does not have that. So the German can use a divisional truck and attach it to that unit for movement. As you can see, the German starts with 4 dispatch, 7 command points. Command rating is 4. That's how when we roll, we'll use that to get more command points. It says in the scenario, this is puzzling to me because a couple of times I've tried to find, and I'll still look some more maybe for errata, but it says the dispatch rating on this division sheet should either be 3 or 4. In the scenario it says 2. So again, that's how you will find extra dispatch points as you're playing. You have to roll for those, but I don't know why a 2 wasn't put here. So I'll keep looking, but it's either errata or they don't explain that very well, because if they wanted to have a 2 dispatch rating, they should have had a box for it, but they don't. Maybe I'm missing something, but it doesn't make sense to me. Explain the setup. I think that's pretty much it, to give you an idea of what the goals are and how we're going to approach this. Again, I'm doing this just to give you an idea of how it plays, not to teach it per se. And as usual, I'll make my mistakes, and people who are very, very good at GTS can point those out. But at least it'll give you an idea of how this plays. So we'll get on to the first turn next.